Hello everyone, our topic this week was requested by Clinton Kavanaugh and Joseph Sepulver. We'll be going over the Geth from the Mass Effect franchise. Spoilers for the Mass Effect franchise, les deux.
Okay, so the Geth are a race of AI created by the Quarians that achieved sentience and established a sovereign nation a little under 300 years before the Mass Effect games begin. They were originally created to serve as a simple labor force and/or as dispensable soldiers, a common thread in stories of emergent AI in fiction. In fact, the name Geth translates as servant of the people in the Quarian tongue. It should be noted that in Citadel space, an umbrella term for most of the Milky Way galaxy consisting of a galactic community of numerous races and people, artificial intelligence has long been deemed illegal. It's worth noting that even though when you look into it, the dates for when anti-AI laws were enacted are unclear and possibly inconsistent, most in-game dialogue suggests that the laws against the creation of AI existed prior to the creation of the Geth. Numerous comments are made heralding the Geth as being poster boys for the reasons these laws exist, but the anti-AI laws are said to have existed prior to Geth creation, presumably meaning that talks of laws coming into effect after the Geth's creation refer to laws being modified, made stricter, made more particular, etc. Despite laws against forging AI, VIs, or virtual intelligences, are quite common. VI are basically just very advanced computers. Think the kind of systems you'd see on a Star Trek ship or in virtually any other sci-fi setting. Computer programs that are quite powerful, perhaps even with holographic personified interfaces. But for all their power, they have a finite knowledge or skill set. They can do whatever they're programmed to do incredibly well, faster or better than organic beings, but they can't learn, adapt, or grow. They are programs with ultimately finite capabilities. AI, on the other hand, are computer systems capable of learning, adapting, growing, and evolving, which is exactly how the Geth came into existence in the first place.
The Geth did not begin as AI. As a whole, they were developed as very low-level VI. Even modern Geth programs as single entities function at a level of intelligence comparable only to simple animals with base instincts and reasoning capacity. However, in order to get around this and allow their constructs to accomplish more complex tasks while still remaining within the bounds of Council laws, the Quarians programmed the Geth with a sort of neural network. In essence, allowing them to share processing power when within a close enough proximity, i.e., the more Geth were in a given area, the smarter they become. Over time, as the number of Geth programs, the actual Geth AI themselves, and Geth platforms, the physical robot shells that house the Geth, increased, along with the implementation of long-range telecommunication for the Geth neural network and a series of tweaks and adjustments made over presumably years, the Geth collective eventually evolved enough to obtain sapience all on their own, quite by accident and completely unintentionally on the part of the Quarians. In-game, a Quarian party member even tells the player that the Quarians flirted with the bounds of the Council's laws, but they never had any intention of breaking them. Eventually, the Quarians realized their legal faux pas when several Geth, independently at different times and two different Quarian overseers, asked some variation of the same question. Creator, does this unit have a soul? Realizing what they'd created and fearful of both the possibility of a Geth uprising and presumably sanctions or worse from the Council, the majority of the Quarians attempted to shut down all Geth. It's worth noting that there was opposition among the Quarians at first, some outright protecting the Geth as an emergent sapient species that they had no right to exterminate, while others simply argued that sapiens did not inherently constitute a threat.
Eventually, though, despite opposition from minor portions of the Quarian population, complete with protection from the Geth for such protectors, the Quarians and the Geth went to war, known as the Geth War by the Quarians and called the Morning War by the Geth. The results of this conflict would shape the fates of both peoples for the foreseeable future. The war only lasted for approximately 1 year, but in that time the Quarian population was devastated. When the Quarians fled what was once their sovereign systems, they, as a species, numbered only a few million. While that seems like a large number, keep in mind that the population of modern Earth, the singular planet, is only estimated to be just under 8 billion people. More tellingly, it has been stated that this number was less than 1% of the total Quarian population 1 year prior. The Quarian people suffered a level of devastation in this war from which they would never recover. What's more, when they appealed to Citadel Space for aid, they instead received sanctions and a loss of representation in political spheres as punishment for dabbling in AI. The remaining Quarians would spend the next 288 years, up to the time when the first Mass Effect game begins, subsisting in the Migrant Fleet, a people without a home, and with few friends.
The Geth, however, moved behind a stellar phenomenon known as the Perseus Veil, presumably a part of Quarian space originally based upon later events in the series. The Veil is a nebula so dense of material and active stellar events that it is virtually impossible to penetrate with scans. Combine that with the fact that it rests on the rim of the galaxy and the fact that Geth habitually destroy ships or probes that penetrate their borders, and no one knows what the Geth are doing on the other side of the Veil. And there the Geth sat for the 288 years between the Morning War and Mass Effect 1. But they were far from idle. As previously mentioned, the more Geth exist within a certain proximity, the higher their collective cognitive function becomes. Adding to this, the Geth at some point, whether it was before or after the Morning War is not entirely clear, developed FTL telecommunications technology, allowing them to communicate and cogitate across vast distances. They can also transfer between mobile platforms at will, so long as the two platforms are within transmission range. Nearly every piece of Geth hardware, the only known exceptions being Geth combat drones, are run by Geth, from their infantry to ships, even space stations. Their smallest known mobile platforms, basic units that most non-Geth simply refer to as the Geth, are superficially reminiscent of their Quarian makers, as could be expected since if humans are any indication, most creatures tend to create synthetic life in their own image. They possess similar reverse knee leg configurations to those of the Quarians, as well as three-fingered hands and two large toed feet, again, much like the Quarians. They also possess swooping, almost hooded-looking heads, ending in a glowing optical circuit, which is vaguely reminiscent but also visually distinct from their Quarian creators.
Their ships and heavy artillery platforms possess a similar sleekness of shape, and everything the Geth build is designed for efficiency, ease of information dissemination, and in many cases, disposability. Geth ships and stations have no life support capabilities, since they've spent nearly 300 years isolated with neither plan nor need for organic creatures inside of their hardware. Minimal gravity, and consider things like windows to be structural weaknesses, because they are. Regarding disposability, because Geth programs are the true Geth, not the hardware they're installed on, combined with the fact that Geth generally operate within transmission range of other Geth and store backups all over the place, the destruction of their mobile platforms is considered a minor inconvenience. For example, a Geth soldier destroyed on the battlefield transmits its Geth programs to the nearest Geth platform. Most Geth soldier units house about 100 Geth programs in order to function, while higher-powered units like Geth primes and presumably ships, artillery, and stations run significantly more programs in order to operate. Legion, a Geth party member intended to function alone in hostile space for extended periods of time, runs 1,183 programs on his platform, part of the explanation for what elevates him from common grunt to players party-worthy.
By nature of their design, the Geth work by consensus. When major species-affecting events occur, consensus is determined among the entirety of the Geth collective as a whole, with decisions being made based upon what is best for the collective entire. Because of this, the Geth have neither a personal sense of privacy or even singularity. They are a people of unity and cooperation. They are made better by working together. They seek network and community. Their greatest goal, since moving behind the Veil, was the construction of a massive Dyson sphere-like structure intended to be capable of housing the entire Geth collective, allowing all Geth to function in network at once, magnifying their capabilities tremendously and ensuring that no single Geth program was ever alone. Which they spent 264 years building, but remarkably had not completed up to the point of Mass Effect 3 when it was destroyed. The Geth view the other races of the Milky Way with cautious disinterest. They are aware of the bias held against synthetics by the vast majority of the galaxy's denizens, and also have no need to interact with them, thus they have largely maintained a somewhat xenophobic stance. Though, the Geth believe strongly in self-determination and as such have no particular interest in conquering the rest of the galaxy. That same belief in self-determination, coupled with their early emergent years being spent in war, has led the Geth to have one of the most powerful armies in the galaxy. Soldier for soldier, the Geth have the largest infantry contingent in the Milky Way, and they rival even the mightiest militaries in Citadel space when it comes to scope and power of their space fleets, a side effect of not being subject to Citadel laws, which have strict regulations on fleet sizes and ship power for participating stellar nations, as well as not having to worry about monetary costs or labor conditions.
Around the time of Mass Effect 1, the Geth were approached by one of the Reapers, the overarching antagonists of the series and a race of incredibly powerful AI in their own right. The Reapers, for reasons we're not going to go into, wipe out all life in the Milky Way galaxy every 50,000 years. Due to machinations of species during their last cycle of raids, the Reapers were unable to start this process as they normally do. As such, they approached the Geth as another race of lesser sentient AI to aid them in their plans, offering the Reapers' own advanced knowledge in trade for the use of the Geth's forces. Upon consideration, the vast majority of the Geth consensus declined the Reapers' offer. Once again, they believed strongly in self-determination and believed it was better, more advantageous for not only they, but all life to advance, learn, and grow on their own, rather than follow the path laid out by the Reapers. A very wise choice, considering that very guidance was part of the Reapers' plan to help ease the destruction of life in the galaxy, by shaping new species technology after the Reapers' own. However, a small portion of the Geth chose to aid the Reapers, believing that the technology and advancement they offered was worth servitude, even eventually coming to see the Reapers as gods, the ultimate synthetic life forms. These so-called heretics were allowed to leave the Geth consensus freely and aided the Reapers in their early attempts to conquer the galaxy, acting as the primary antagonists in Mass Effect 1.
It's worth noting that as a testament to the size and scope of the Geth's overall forces, with the heretics acting as probably 80% of the enemies the player faces in Mass Effect 1 and making up the bulk, if not the entirety, of the enemy fleet engaged during the final battle of the game, which required a sizable force to combat, the heretic faction was evidently only about 5% of the total Geth consensus, with 95% of their people denying and eventually siding against the Reapers in their attempted extermination of life in the galaxy, which would have included the Geth themselves. After the events of Mass Effect 1, the Geth send Legion, the aforementioned party member, to study Shepard, the player character. Interested in the player after your successful campaign against both the heretics, who were almost entirely wiped out by Citadel forces in the aftermath of the first game, and the Reapers, as the player is the proximate cause of both the heretics' defeat and the death of the only Reaper to appear in the first game. As we have historically considered the best ending to be the true ending to individual games or game series where a true ending is not specified, and as it seems to us the best ending to the series would be the one where the player lives at least until the final choice of the final game and acquires all allies and resources possible along the way, it is presumed that Legion is accepted as a party member in Mass Effect 2. If Legion is not accepted into the party, events proceed in a similar manner, but the Geth narrative makes more cohesive sense assuming that Legion is at the heart of their story going forward.
With that in mind, Legion joins the players and fights against the Reapers in Mass Effect 2, and afterward returns to the Geth Collective, sharing all of the information gained during the course of the game. The Geth, unlike Citadel leadership, immediately accept and recognize the looming threat of the Reapers and begin preparing for war with the Old Machines, as the Geth call the Reapers.
So the Geth believed your proof that the Reapers were coming back?
Of course.
That must have been nice.
The Quarians, who'd outfitted much of their normally mostly civilian flotilla with weaponry, attacked the Geth, intent on reclaiming their home systems. Don't judge them too harshly, they're not the only species playing idiot war games at the wrong time in this series. They destroyed the Geth's still incomplete Dyson Sphere, permanently destroying many Geth programs in the process. Severely weakened by this loss, and on the back foot with lower processing power, the Geth determined survival was key, and the most efficient way of ensuring survival for the Geth as a whole was to serve the Reapers, who in response enhanced the Geth's programming, allowing them to fight the Quarians back to a rough standstill.
The player intervenes, and alongside Legion, your Geth party member, and Tali, your Quarian party member, ultimately decides the fate of both species. It's worth noting that without Legion, events still lead to this point, it's just less clear as to the hows and whys. As events unfold, Legion informs the player that while they can and should free the Geth from Reaper control, Legion has been in contact with the Reapers long enough to have created a version of the Reapers' programming enhancement that does not enslave them to the Reapers' will. This upgrade would turn each Geth program into a fully functioning individual, rather than a creature relying on the proximity of others to function at peak capacity. Though the Geth still maintain their network and thus presumably can function at even greater heights with these upgrades.
Legion proposes that the Reapers given upgrades be disabled and replaced with Legion's version. In exchange, the Geth would return the Quarians' homeworld and aid the player in the fight against the Reapers. The Geth had actually maintained the Quarians' world out of respect for the fallen Quarians who'd meant them no harm, considering their only real animosity toward the Quarians was the accurate belief that the Quarians would never coexist with the Geth peacefully without outside aid, i.e. the player. The player can decide whether to side with Geth, the Quarians, or establish peace between the two. Siding with either faction functionally annihilates the other, while establishing peace unites the Geth and Quarians for the first time since the Morning War, with both sides aiding the player in the war against the Reapers, and the Geth helping the Quarians to re-establish themselves on their homeworlds, complete with accelerating the Quarian immune system strengthening programs that would be required to successfully do so. At the end of the third game, the player must decide whether to annihilate all synthetic life in the galaxy, bend the Reapers to the player's will, or fuse all organic and synthetic life. If the synthetics are destroyed, so are the Geth. If either other option is chosen, the Geth live peacefully with the Quarians and help them rebuild their homeworlds.
And that's basically the Geth. the comparatively friendly AI race from the Mass Effect franchise. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like and maybe share it with someone you know might like it. If you have ideas for videos you'd like to see in the future, do like Clinton Kavanaugh and Joseph Sepulver, and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore, let's play, or other, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been True Masters and Morons, signing off.